Okay, now a lot of people don't know this, but there's another part of the world. It's called Australia. And you have to go across something we call an equator to get there. And right now in Australia, what time is it?
It is g'day, mate.
Good day.
It's about 20 past 11 in the morning.
And they actually have clergy people in this country. They don't often wear collars and dress up in the high priestly way we do here in America. And
That's
I
right.
have on the other side of my screen here a clergyman named David Ould, who is a wonderful clergy person from Australia. He and his family visited my house last, what was it, August?
No, no, no. It was
July?
almost a year ago now.
Yeah, my
Almost a year
gosh.
ago. It was great.
Yeah.
Hey, mate, I actually wore my clerical collar this past week.
Huh.
It's still fit. It's still
Okay.
fit. I put it on for a hospital visit. It was great.
Now, a lot of people are looking at the your image right now and going, "You look like somebody else I know," and
I
that's
do.
because you are the twin of Peter Ould, who lives in England. Now, how did you
That's right.
guys get
Clone.
separated at birth? Well, you didn't, but you did end up in Australia. Um, you both are bloggers, and on your blog this week, you broke a story about a bishop who, in a previous life, facilitated a same-sex wedding. Now, here in America, that's whatever. Now, over in Australia, it's not so whatever. You guys are kind of dealing with this new liberal crisis for the last 10 years. Give me some background to the story.
Sure. So I originally broke this late last year
Hmm.
when I was sent some information about a lady called the Reverend Dr. Sarah McNeil, who was nominated to be the first female diocesan bishop here in Australia. We've had a couple of assistant bishops in the Metropolitan Diocese, but she's the first female assistant. A female diocesan bishop
Hmm.
nominated for the Diocese of Grafton, which is in the north of New South Wales. So just think sort of halfway between Sydney and Brisbane, roughly around there,
Okay,
sort of a
right.
country rural diocese. So I was sent some links by an interested observer of some sermons that Dr. McNeil had preached. One of which was her basically challenging the orthodox position on human sexuality, and in a sermon on the parable on the prodigal, she said, how are we like the Pharisees? Well, is it perhaps, rhetorically asking, is it perhaps that we won't ordain people in same-sex relationships? So
Hmm.
she just stuck her flag in the ground there on that one. And also, we reported on another sermon where, again, going through Luke, she actually flatly denied penal substitution. She said it was repugnant and the rest of it. And interesting enough, she described it really accurately, didn't caricature it, but rejected it outright. And so I wrote a piece asking what many people were asking me, which is how can somebody who so flatly contradicts the Anglican Church on the key issues of the day, that is human sexuality and the atonement, how can they be nominated to be a bishop, and how can other bishops take part in that consecration? Uh,
Now, here in America, the Episcopal
yeah.
Church does this all the time. Why is this now news in Australia? You guys don't do this all the time?
Well, look, it's been pointed out to me, there have been bishops consecrated before who hold these views. I just think we're getting to that point in the internet age where we're no longer able to not know about the
Hmm.
positions that these people hold. So yeah, you might want to say this has happened before. It certainly has, not in the rate that it's going on in America, not publicly and proudly. Um, but nevertheless, it's happened before. But there's some interest in her because she's the first female diocesan. But
Right.
but the real interest is not in the fact that she's a woman. The real interest is in her theological positions that she's taken. Now, what happened recently, of course, is that she was consecrated last Saturday. There was a protest statement made by the president of the Anglican Church League here in Sydney, of whom I'm on the council for, and then. I got a comment on my blog which said someone was aware that she had participated in what that person called a faux same-sex wedding. So we want to be really careful about what it was. It wasn't a wedding. It didn't have specifically wedding vows, but it was an event where a lesbian couple had had a civil union, and they'd had that civil union at a foreign embassy in Australia, because one of them came from a foreign country. And then, as part of the more general celebrations around that, had a church service at which Reverend Dr. Bishop, now McNeil, had presided over that. And so it wasn't a wedding. It wasn't technically a blessing of the relationship. And yet you have this thing where there were invitations sent out and people turned up for this service that was structured around these people. So, you know, we can play word games about what it was, but everyone knows the intent was to have a service that affirmed and endorsed this same-sex relationship. And what's really interesting is, as I did some sniffing around it, a whole bunch of people that I gently chased with it said, oh yeah, we know that happened.
Well,
so it wasn't like it was a secret.
No,
it's just no one had gone, look, hang on, here it is.
Well, it's not a secret because, like many of us in America, it's not a surprise. Now, you are a clergy person. One of the key parts of the wedding is solemnizing the relationship. That's your job. You can't do a whole lot more. You're not wedding them. But at the end, you solemnize and say, you know, before God, this is a done deal. Now go do your deal, and you know that's how it works,
so to speak. That's right.
I'm being as real as possible here. Okay. So, in as such, did she solemnize this relationship?
Now look, everybody I speak to about Dr. McNeil acknowledges one thing, that she is a very intelligent and a very careful lady. So she will have been very, very careful in the language that she used. And so if we tried to say it was a wedding, she quite rightly would say, no, it wasn't. But the point is this. One of the things that interests me at the moment is the way that we use our words in a very clever way or in order to deceive or simply to send slightly the wrong impression or to send an impression without actually being skewered by it. I just actually wrote an article called 60 Theses for Honesty in the Anglican Church. Right? I talk a lot about this. Ultimately, the purpose of the service was to endorse and affirm that relationship. And so while Dr. McNeil was no doubt very careful about the words that she used, the intent of the service was clear to everybody that was invited to it. I mean, you don't send out invitations to a service like this if it's just a regular church service on a Sunday morning. For example, I'm about to tomorrow morning baptize 2 children from the same wider family, and there are literally 100 extra people coming to church. Very, very exciting. I get to tell them all the gospel, but there will be a specific part of the service that is specifically about those 2 children. Else, why were they invited? All these guests.
Sure.
Same thing here. Same thing here.
Well, we're going back to the deception now. This is kind of the key original deception. Did God really say that? Did Lambeth 110 really say that about sexuality? She was clearly in violation of Lambeth 110. Somebody suggested maybe she's changed her mind now that she's a bishop.
Look, if she has changed her mind, and of course she's perfectly entitled to do that, probably 2 observations are in order. One, she'll have changed her mind against a position that she held in long standing. So it will have been quite an abrupt change of mind. And it'd be interesting to know what had persuaded her otherwise. Secondly, if she has changed her mind, then simply some clarity on that would be helpful. As it stands, we have a bishop that's been consecrated who's publicly on the record, not only in her words in sermons, but also in her actions, as affirming same-sex relationships as intrinsically good. That stands in contradiction to the official position of the Anglican Church of Australia, and of course to a bishop's protocol that was released a couple of years ago, that she would be expected to ascribe to. Now, people in her position, and of course there's John McIntyre down in Gippsland who's facing exactly these criticisms as well. They can say, oh, I'll uphold it, but do you know what I mean? Imagine you've got a situation where you have the chief executive of Pepsi, who at every board meeting has a glass with the word Coke written on it, sitting there at his board meeting and at his press conferences. And every time someone says to him, do you think Pepsi is the better drink? He goes, yes, the official position of PepsiCo is that Pepsi is the best cola drink there is. Go, 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 go. At some point, you want to go, do you know what? I think somebody else should be taking your salary.
Sure.
It's that kind of position. So it's not, I think the thing we've got to keep saying to our friends is, you know, we're not simply looking for these public dry affirmations. I will uphold the position. I will do this. We're looking for people who actually genuinely believe it. I mean, Peter, when he writes to the church in his first letter, says you're looking for elders and overseers who do this with conviction. 1 Peter chapter 5. I'm paraphrasing, but the intent is there.
Yeah.
It seems we have bishops who are prepared to sign it, but not actually believe it.
Well, we're coming up on 10 minutes now. I'm expecting us to, at some point, you're going to tell me that the Sydney bishops and the Bishop of Australia of Sydney is going to, the Archbishop of Sydney is going to have some type of formal statement on this or condemnation of this. What is the future of something like this in the church, or this just going to go by the wayside?
Look, all of this is happening in the wider context of tensions in the Anglican Church in Australia. Sydney Diocese remains a powerful force and an influential force, particularly at the General Synod, which is coming up at July, which I'm an elected delegate for as well. Our new Archbishop, Glenn Davis, is well respected in Australia. Not always in agreement on his views, but with the clear conscience and conviction when he holds the views. And he's known to be a friend to many of these smaller dioceses, even when he disagrees with them theologically. He absented himself from Sarah McNeil's consecration as a matter of conscience over her being a woman. He's not in favour of that. And of course, there will be an election for primate in Australia as well, coming up in the end of June, just before the General Synod too. And so there's a lot at stake in terms of influence and longer games and things that are being thought through by evangelicals and conservative Anglo-Catholics throughout the country. As I call round senior figures in the diocese and the elder statesmen, if you like, of conservatism across the diocese, particularly in some of these rural dioceses where they're in a minority, what I sense is many of them starting to ask themselves, where do we actually draw the line? What will be the thing that makes us go, look, enough is enough? And most of them are, I think quite rightly, reluctant for the fight, but recognise that it's coming. The Fellowship of Confessing Anglicans for Australia and Oceania will be forming up soon, I understand, and that'll be interesting to see how that affects the dialogue and the interchange. Stay here, I'll bring you some more news on that in future recordings. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that means that people are being careful about how they approach this stuff. Having said that, there's also a lot of people who are frustrated that senior figures are not speaking up clearly on this matter. So you could expect much of this stuff to rumble on underneath.
David, I want to thank you for a report. I hear noise in the background. Are you still having that pool installed?
Hey, listen, the pool is in the ground. Half the concrete is round it. I have landscapers coming on Monday morning, and I think I'm just going to inject a little line here so they can just all suck the last of my blood out, because it's unbelievably expensive to do this thing. And my kids are going, when can we swim? When can we swim?
Are we there yet? When can we swim?
The pool guy is as hard as nails. He's like, not until the concrete is properly in.
It has to be cured.
It does.
David, thank you for your report, and we'll be talking to you soon.
That's right. Next one from the poolside.
Oh,
See you,
yeah.
Kevin.
I'll be down. Copper tone 10,000, Later. Bye-bye.
Bye, Kev.